Welcome to Virteva's Let's Talk Roadmap Rundown, the show where we talk through the latest updates, enhancements, and features coming soon to Microsoft 365. It's Tuesday, May 21st. I'm Scott Ledwan, and on this week's edition of the Roadmap Rundown, I'm riding solo to let you know about a new calendar view, which is coming to the new Outlook, new ways to use Microsoft Loop in Teams recurring meetings, the ability to share a channel link directly from a shared channel, and new ways to silence those pesky unwanted notifications in Microsoft Teams. Before we get into the news today, I'd like to again thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and remind you that if you can hit those like and subscribe buttons or share our content with your friends and colleagues, it goes a long way to help the channel. Over 50% of our watchers and listeners aren't subscribed, and hitting those buttons is huge for helping us get this show in front of more people and growing the channel quickly. All right, let's get into our first update for the week. Message Center ID MC793320, a new split view is coming to Outlook. Outlook will soon introduce split view in monthly views for multiple calendars starting in early June 2024 and completing by early July 2024. This is a feature that's going to be available by default and requires no administrative action, so it's just going to kind of roll out over time. For those of you that are familiar with Classic Outlook, this is a view that's already there today where you can kind of in that left side panel show multiple calendars at the same time. They lay over the top of each other, but you have the ability to kind of pop the calendars out separate so you can see them in separate tabs. Not really a whole lot new here. Again, this is kind of one of the left behind features from Classic Outlook that just hadn't made it to the web version or hadn't made it over to the new version of Outlook. But again, as time goes on, we're just seeing more and more of those updates move over. So I believe this is a good change. There's not a whole lot in terms of screenshots shown here, other than it's going to just be an extra button in the ribbon bar under the home section. I'll kind of layer that on here so that you can see it a little bit more clearly. But yeah, not a whole lot going on here. If you're using Classic Outlook today and you're used to this, you probably already know how to use it. If you're using the new version of Outlook, you've probably been wondering, hey, where is this? I want it. So again, this is going to be rolling out very shortly here. We're at the end of May, so expect it to start rolling out to your Outlook in early June. And it should make it to all Outlook clients, all new Outlook clients by early July. Next up, we have Message Center ID MC792605. Auto create Microsoft Loops workspaces to share meeting content. Microsoft Teams will soon prompt meeting organizers of recurring meetings to create a Microsoft Loop workspace for sharing and collaborating on meeting content. This feature will start rolling out in mid-May. So basically right now, it may have already actually started to hit your tenants, and will support meetings with 3 to 50 invites. No admin action is required. So if you already have a recurring invite out there today for less than 50 people, this may have already actually started to apply for you and your organization. This is expected to be completed by June 2024. And as we kind of scroll down and look at some of these screenshots here, kind of take a peek at what that looks like. Is you can see that Open a Loop workspace is going to show up directly kind of above that meeting recap information. For those of you that haven't used Loop yet, I think that it's worth giving it a shot. I'm trying to use it more day to day, especially for this Message Center show, so that I can work with Chris and Holly to kind of share different announcements and put those up, and we can kind of collaborate them. Loop is not quite a full-on Notion competitor there. I feel like Microsoft has a vision for it, but maybe hasn't fully realized that yet. But I think that by getting Loop in front of more people and allowing them to play with it a little bit more in this kind of recurring concept of, hey, your meeting ended, open the Loop space, and once the Loop workspace has been created for it, you don't have to create it every single time. You'll be able to then quickly access things like your Word documents, PowerPoints, previous notes from other meetings, and then you'll get a little bit more used to it being there rather than having to today. You have to go kind of search and find the Loop component. It might be on your OneDrive. It might be on somebody else's OneDrive. or you have to open up the Loop app. If you've downloaded it through the Microsoft Store, you need to open up loop.microsoft.com, which, by the way, is actually in the process of migrating over to the Cloud Microsoft naming convention. So be prepared for that as well, because Loop, I saw it the other day, move. All the other Microsoft 365 web apps are going to start moving as well. So that's coming down the line. But just in terms of this message center announcement, which again is rolling out over the next month or so, I think that this is a super positive change. I like Microsoft Loop. I want it to grow. I want it to be better than it is today. It just needs a little bit more work. We talked on the show a couple of weeks ago that Microsoft Loop is also coming to the desktop version of OneNote. I'm really excited for that, because then I feel like I'll be able to really kind of get all my Loop components in one spot. Loop has it's kind of got the ball and chain on its leg right now, where it can't quite be what it wants to be, just due to the fact that it doesn't currently support external meeting invites, or just internal, in general, external, entities. Like, you can't use Loop outside of your own organization right now. And I think that that's kind of a big holdback. And also, it's just been kind of missing in some of the other apps outside of just kind of like Teams and Outlook. So I think that as Microsoft starts to put Loop out in front of more people will start to play with it, understand what it is. Microsoft will read that telemetry, and hopefully we will see Loop grow into something bigger and kind of get that more grand vision about it that I think Microsoft had intended for it initially when they announced it at Build or Ignite, I'm sorry, back in 2022 or 2021. All right. Next one up, we have Message Center MC792603 and roadmap ID 325330. Only one of the announcements that we have this week from the Message Center and roadmap that actually has a roadmap ID associated with it. But this one is for asking to join a shared channel with a channel link. So Microsoft Teams will soon allow in-tenant users to request a join to a shared channel using a channel link. Channel owners can approve or deny these requests. The feature will be available for Teams on desktop and Mac, with rollout starting in mid-June, so about a month from now, with a targeted release, and then later in June for general availability into mid-July for government cloud. So today, when you want to invite people to join a team, is you need to open up the team, click add members. It kind of gives you that prompt box, and it asks you, all right, who do you want to add? And then you have to type in each person's name individually. And while that is not necessarily an incredibly difficult thing to do, if you're adding 20, 30, 40, 50 people to it, that can be a bit of a pain in the butt. So I think that what they are trying to accomplish with that, and I'll blow this screenshot up, is that rather than having to go through and invite 50 people to the team, instead you can create a shared meeting link for that shared channel. You can then send it in a group chat for people with inside your org, or in an email message, or even within a Teams channel itself. And then people can click on it, and then it will prompt the owners of the team to approve the membership for that. So it's, from an administrative point of view, I think that it's a little bit less taxing than having to go through the name picker and add all those different names in there. But, you're still going to actually have to click the approve button each time if you're a team owner. And I believe that the way that share channels work right now, because I have a few myself that we share with different organizations, is that only the owners, I believe, can actually share those teams links or add people to the channel. So I believe that, yes, while this will make things a little bit easier, as this is still, it almost feels a little bit cobbled together, just to, try and make it a little bit easier for the users to get invited. So if you put this into like a standing OneNote or a standing Loop component for, hey, this is our product development team, when new members come on and they need access to the team, anybody on the team can send them the link rather than invite them directly. And then that sends an email to the owner and says, hey, do you approve this? Do you deny this? I think that the owner of the team is probably going to want some context to know who actually is being invited to the team before they hit approve, and not just kind of rubber stamp that approval. But overall, I think that this is a good change. I think that it does make the administration of adding people to teams a little bit easier. But at the same point, we'll kind of see how this goes. I think long run, being able to see private teams and request to join them might be the next logical step in this, but you also might not want private teams to be, viewable by the general public and your tenant. But overall, we'll see how this one plays out. I think from an administration standpoint, yes, it is going to make things a little bit easier. But at the same point, again, it just kind of feels like it is solving a problem that didn't necessarily need to exist because it could have been architected a little bit better upfront. All right, moving on to the next one. So a shame that Chris Strong couldn't be here for these next couple that are coming up. But we're going to be talking about Teams notifications. The first one is Message Center 793965, suppressing notifications from muted chats. And the next one up is, I think, the one that Chris Strong really wanted to talk about, which is going to be suppressing notifications from hidden Teams channels. So we'll talk about chats first. Microsoft is introducing a new suppress notification option to Teams for add everyone mentions and reactions in muted channels while notifying for personal mentions only. This is going to start rolling out in early June, so about a week and a half from now. And it's expected to be completed by late July, early August, depending on service availability. Admins aren't going to have to do anything with this. What this is really trying to solve for is when you're in a group chat or when you're in a meeting and that meeting is ended and you've decided, you know what, I don't need to hear from this anymore, or Teams may automatically mute that for you because the meeting has come and passed and people keep talking in there. Maybe you have 20, 30 people in that meeting and they're all sending messages and links and reacting with smiles and emojis in that new high five emoji in Teams where you can kind of high five each other back and forth. You may not want to see all that happening in there. That channel was muted for a reason, but the reactions and the at everyone's are still getting through, and you only care if you're being mentioned. So if someone ats you in the future, you're going to be able to see that message come through despite the fact that you're muted, but everything else is actually going to do what it should do and remain muted. So it still mutes normal conversation in there, but mentions and reactions for whatever reason are on some sort of a different layer of that notification system. So they're improving this. And again, it'll be rolling out here over the next month and a half to 2 months. Next one in line here, notification suppression for hidden channels. So I kind of alluded to that as I was talking about chats. This is a new feature that's going to be releasing in the June to July timeframe. A pretty loose window on that, but it's going to suppress notifications from hidden channels except for personal and tag mentions. The change is aimed to streamline user notification, not require action on behalf of the user itself. The tenant admins and Teams admins, they're not going to have to do anything for this. Again, very similar to the chat change, this is meant to be pretty low touch for users, and it's supposed to really just be kind of an improvement and an enhancement on what is currently there today. So to kind of describe this a little bit more, and this has been a giant pain in the butt for myself, a giant pain in the butt for others, is today in Teams is you may be a member of a team that has 3 channels and it's not a big deal. But if you're a member of a team that has 20 channels and you only care about 3 of them, you generally will go in and you will not necessarily hide those channels. You can hide them so that they don't show up in your list, but you will go into each individual channel, click on the ... click channel notifications, and then you will have to say, hey, I want to adjust my notification settings so I don't see them show up in the banner. They don't show up on my phone after hours. They don't show up at all. Like, I don't want to see anything from this. I hid the channel. Why am I seeing this? Well, they still get through sometimes. And honestly, they get through most of the time today. So what Microsoft is doing here is they are giving you the option that when you click that hide button that I'm displaying on the screen, is it's automatically suppressing any notifications that come through there, except for kind of those direct tag mentions or direct at mentions, very similar to kind of what we just went through talking about the suppression of the chat notifications. So positive change. Again, this is one of those things that I feel like kind of should have existed in the past. Very similar to the OneNote stuff that we talked about on the show last week with Chris in terms of, or a couple of weeks ago with Chris in terms of recordings for Teams meetings automatically going to the organizer's OneDrive. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. They should have did this to begin with. For whatever reason, they didn't. This may have been a limitation in the older version of Teams. And now that we're moving on to the newer version, that's why we're seeing them start to invest a little bit more time into this area to fix some of those problems. All right. And that's the end of the show. Again, I wanted to make sure that we still did a show this week just to make sure that everyone was aware of what was going on with some of these new message center announcements that were coming out. A very busy week this week for me and other folks at Virteva, which is why we kind of had to have a compressed show. We are not planning on being here next week because of the Memorial Day holiday in the US. We will be closed on Monday, so that means no message center show. So we're taking essentially about a week to a week and a half off, and then we will be back at the beginning of June. Again, Build is happening this week. So if you are interested in what's going on with Microsoft Build in terms of AI, Power Platform announcements, SharePoint, all that stuff's happening. We've already seen some of the AI announcements come out around AI-powered PC, which is Copilot Plus, which is something that we will probably be talking about on an upcoming Let's Talk podcast, just due to kind of the craziness of some of the stuff that's happening there with MPUs on the units themselves. The new recall feature that's going to be baked into Windows. It used to be the Windows 10 timeline feature, and Mac had something very similar to that. I've been digging into that a little bit today, trying to better understand the security implications on that. But I won't dive into that here. We'll try and keep this podcast under 25 minutes today. But yeah, so we're planning on talking about that. Also, really looking forward to digging in on the new Teams wardrobe features, the new Teams avatars, being able to create those from a photo, and just all the new stuff that's coming out of June. This is an exciting time of the year because we are starting to come out of that lull period of kind of the spring where not a whole lot gets announced. And yeah, excited to see new features coming out. Oh, and I forgot to mention Microsoft Places, the app that got announced during the COVID years that honestly, Chris, myself, Holly, we all kind of thought that it just went away and they stopped working on it. But that actually went into preview this week. We've enabled it in our own tenant. We're starting to play around with that in Teams Room devices. We'll be excited to share some feedback on that for you as well. Again, thank you for tuning in to talk all things Microsoft 365 with us. If your organization is interested in Microsoft 365 or is already using it and needs help implementing or managing new or existing services, you can contact Virteva by emailing us directly at letstalk@virteva.com or by visiting our website at www.virteva.com. And if you made it this far, please don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons. It really helps us out. Till next time, have a great one. Bye.